Hello, everyone. So today we have a student from the University of California Riverside. His name is William. And William, can you please go ahead and just introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Wang. I'm currently an incoming third-year student. I'm majoring pre-business. I'm going to be concentrating in information system to be exact. And yeah, from Riverside, having a good time, having a blast there. And in my free time, I'm also involved in a social fraternity there. I'm involved in student government and currently working on like a little startup, I guess, and stuff like that. So yeah.
All right, that's awesome. And yeah, we'll definitely touch up a lot more on what you just mentioned. But I guess first and foremost, let's talk about your major. So obviously, you're talking about majoring in pre-business and information systems. So I guess, just to put it simply, why did you choose that specific field to study?
I always knew I really like business. I feel like a lot of times a common what people most of the time think is that, oh, I'm gonna choose business because I don't know what to take. But for me, I always liked business since a kid. Be selling candy bars in middle school, start sneaker reselling in high school, and I'm still working on business. Specifically, chose information system because I feel like it really ties into entrepreneurship a lot. Since you gotta know some parts of coding, since you're the middle guy between talking to the developers and to the business people, right? I think it can be really beneficial in entrepreneurship. And let's say if entrepreneurship doesn't end up working out, I always can go back to be a project manager, and I think it's a really versatile major. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's just something that interests me. As simple as that. It's something I'm interested in. I can confidently say I'm passionate in it, and something I truly know I would enjoy doing.
Yeah, no, that's great. And obviously, you mentioned entrepreneurship. And, interestingly enough, I think in high school or even when I graduated from high school, it was something that was very interesting to go into. A lot of people would talk about being an entrepreneur. And I was just wondering if you could just touch up on your life about being an entrepreneur. Like, I know you obviously on LinkedIn, you obviously post a lot of things about it or your experience about it. So I was wondering if you could just touch up, like, yeah, what's your life like currently right now as kind of working as a bit of an entrepreneur?
Yeah, of course. I think the first thing I kind of want to talk about is that you kind of gotta have it in you. You just gotta know if you like it or not, honestly, because it's probably one of the hardest thing you can do, in my opinion. Because number one thing is very different from school, right? Not taking anything away from school. Like people who are doctors, that I can't be a doctor. I can't be a lawyer because that's just not something that interests me. You got to put in hours of time into it. But entrepreneurship is a little different in that sense. Is that you don't really have the textbook. It's kind of like you got to find your own path. It's like everyone's story is kind of different. School is kind of like, oh, study chapter ABC. You study hard. Majority of the time, you do pretty good. But you don't even have a textbook, so you got to figure that out. So it's definitely glamorized, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I really, really do enjoy it, and I know USC has a really amazing entrepreneurship program that really supports the system. That's definitely something we're trying to do a lot more at Riverside. Trying to have this network to kind of teach other and kind of motivate each other because I feel like it's a different type of like education, right, for entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with you. I think entrepreneurship is, like you mentioned, obviously not to take away from academics. Academics is obviously important if you want to be like a
It's
doctor.
definitely challenging
Yeah,
still, yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but with entrepreneurship, it's almost like, like you mentioned, there is no textbook. You kind of have to learn by experience. You have to kind of get into it. And I really appreciate, yeah, like you obviously mentioned, even though some schools maybe don't have that support system yet, that you guys are developing it and you guys are starting to reach out. I think it's a great field to go into, especially for those who are really interested in it. But like you said, you got to be fully committed. You got to be fully interested in going into that field to be successful and whatnot. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
perfect. So I think let's talk about obviously UC Riverside. So I guess just first and foremost, why did you decide on UC Riverside as the school you would be attending for college?
I'll just be frank with you. I didn't really get into any other schools. I was not the best student in high school. I was pretty surprised I got into Riverside too. So I was very thankful. And once I got into Riverside, having a blast here. But yeah, I was either debating between Cal Poly Pomona and UC Riverside. So yeah, I ended up going to Riverside because it has a UC name tied to it, and my mom liked it more. So I was like, okay, I guess why not? Let's give this a shot.
Yeah, perfect. And I noticed how you mentioned that you had two decisions between UC Riverside and Cal Poly Pomona, which for those that don't know, those are the UC system, the Cal State system in the California, which are like public schools. Was there any reason why I guess you applied to public school systems? Obviously, there's a lot of factors of why the differences between public school and private school. So was there any specific reason on applying to public schools for you?
Yeah, of course. I'm sure we all know the biggest reason is financial reasons. I just can't justify to myself if I gotta pay $80,000 to get this education system. Paying 30,000 to me is enough already. I just can't imagine paying 80,000. And that was just a financial situation me and my family's, and that's just too much money. So I never applied to any private schools.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I definitely agree with you too. I mean, honestly, if I could have redone my entire college application process, I probably would have only applied to maybe like one or two privates and would have just done UC schools. Just because, yeah, the financial factor I think is something that some people tend to overlook when applying to college. It is such a huge thing to mention. Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned earlier that obviously, being honest, you didn't have many college options for what you could have chosen. So obviously you chose Riverside. But I guess, you mentioned that, maybe you weren't the best student in high school. Do you think now in college you've obviously changed and, you're making the most of what you have at Riverside?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's kind of like a switch up. I feel like in high school I wasn't really the best student, mainly because I just didn't want to study it. I thought study something to be easy, and I wasn't really disciplined. But once I came to college, I was kind of like, well, studying is. I think the big switch up to me is that studying, nobody likes to study.
Mm.
That's why I didn't realize in high school. But once I got to college, I realized, okay, nobody likes to study. It's a straight discipline thing. You just got to do it. But obviously, the extracurriculars, like for example, student government, fraternity wise, that's something I'm passionate about. But while studying, I kind of just had that click that, you just got to grind. That's the mentality that kind of switched up. And after that, been very successful academically, like here at Riverside. A lot better than high school. Let's just leave it at that.
I mean, that's awesome. That's great to hear. I mean, no, I agree with you. I mean, it is, I think, true to say that like some students will actually enjoy studying. Some kids actually like, learning in that regards, but some students fit better towards maybe your model where, you're very passionate about your extracurriculars and the other side things you do that necessarily, studying, like you said, is a grinding thing that you just kind of have to do it. It's a discipline. But no, I actually really like that mindset, saying that, studying might not be for everyone, but it's kind of something that you just kind of have to do, especially in, high school or
Hmm.
college. And yeah, it's great. Now, I guess, William, I wanted to take a step back into your senior year of high school, when you were applying to college application process. So I guess, just first and foremost, how did you feel about the college application process when you were in high school?
Um, it's been a while for me actually. I have not thought about it for a while, but I feel like it's definitely extremely complicated and nerve wracking. I'm sure like because that's basically how I feel like in high school, right? Everyone's idea is that like once I get into this college, this is my life. My life is set. Like I won a lottery if I go into Ivy League school. I won a lottery if I go to a UC school, right? But in reality, that's number one. That's actually not true. I'm sure Christian, you can relate now.
Yeah.
Avoiding college is that it's like what you do in college, right? You still got to make it out of college first, right? Number two. But then at that moment, I felt like that was my life kind of depending on it. And both of us from the 6U6 area, from Arcadia High School, who was extremely competitive academically between the peers too. So definitely a lot of pressure. But I feel like it was really complicated. I didn't know really what was happening. But luckily, I had an older sister who's very academically strong and who cares about academics a lot. So she really helped me through that process. But definitely complicated and frustrating.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. And I think, I like how you mentioned that it's kind of a lottery, getting into what schools that you got into. And that in the end, yeah, the name of the school, like, whether it's an Ivy, a top UC school, those are great things to have. Like, obviously, they're well-named schools, and if you get into it, that's a great accomplishment. But I think when kids, they don't realize that, the school you go to doesn't necessarily matter. Like, it's what you make of it rather than, like, just you're attending for the sake of attending this school because it has this name. Yeah, maybe your school is probably the best in the nation, but if you didn't do anything with your life other than study, then what benefit did you really gain from college? So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that
Yeah.
statement.
Mhm.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned that, you had an older sister who was able to guide you, throughout the process. But other than your older sister, what would you say was the best way that you got, information about the college application process? Was it through school resources, the internet, upperclassmen? What would you say, you utilize in order to help you out?
I mean, I'm always more of a people person, so I didn't really do much. I feel like when you ask someone a question, you definitely got to do some research before. So you don't just be asking them a bunch of questions and now just be rude, right? But I
Yeah.
mean, I definitely did like some really basic research first, and what I did was I asked my sister a lot of questions. I asked like a lot of upperclassmen a lot more questions. I'm a big believer of learning from like people to people who went through the same path and just kind of following the same path. Then trying to create your own a lot of times. So then what I did was that, like I said, I did some research on my own. Then I asked my sister a lot of questions, upperclassmen a lot of questions. I didn't really utilize campus resources that much because they didn't really help me out. I went a couple of times, but they weren't really the nicest to me.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, well, I don't need this. I can, divert, spend my time somewhere else. So mainly just like to, people I know who walk the same path.
Yeah, no, and I definitely agree with you on that. I think I just mentioned this because there's a lot of students out there who maybe aren't so fortunate as we are to have kind of like a great school system with like that has a couple resources. Obviously, works differently for every single person, but I mentioned that because I think it's great to hear that. Obviously, I don't think it's really a lack of resources for most people. It's just a lack of resourcefulness. I think talking to people, like you
Yeah,
mentioned,
I agree. Hmm.
yeah, being a people's person, that's a great thing to have. Obviously, talk to people with experience because they've been through the process. They're at the current school for whatever major for a reason. And obviously, like we mentioned, I think that's kind of like this whole project right here. Obviously, we talk to students, giving their feedback and experiences with these questions. And yeah, I think it's a great thing to do. So if you don't know where to start, I would say just start asking people. And obviously, a quick internet searches online. Do your basic research before you ask
Yeah.
the question,
Hmm.
so that you don't get you don't get lost. Because once you ask one question, you're gonna have like maybe 20 more pop up right after. So definitely do a bit of early research. Just simple internet searches, honestly, will be more than fine. But yeah, no, I think that was really great advice for that. And I guess, William,
Yeah.
just kind of wrapping up your college application process. If you could have changed anything or redo the entire process, what would you have done differently, if anything at all?
Um, that's a really good question, actually. Well, I feel like I did really well during the college application process, but I would say it's kind of like what the hands you were dealt with, right? Definitely, study a little more in high school. Like the first 3 years, like you can have the best essays, you can have but at the end of the day, it's like the GPA is what most people look at, right? That's like something concrete. Number one, the first impression. I mean, thinking from a college application point of view, and your ACT and SAT score, that's what they strictly look at. And those things you can't really change when you're applying already, right? So for me, it wouldn't say the process, but for me, I would say like the work beforehand. So I dealt myself a better card, so I have more leverage and then give me more options with colleges and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great. In fact, I actually had another person tell me that they believe that the whole college application process, that senior year when you're applying, they say that that's actually the end goal because realistically, you started your college application process since freshman year. It's like, building that GPA,
Exactly. Yeah.
building those extracurriculars and the SAT. And yeah, I think that's
Hmm.
great. So I think it's good to say that by the senior year, like you mentioned, a great analogy, like the cards that you were dealt, you want to give yourself the best cards, the best chances possible by the time you're in your senior year. So that way you don't have to worry about all the other things you're having to like compensate for previous like, oh, okay, maybe my GPA wasn't so good, so I have to compensate in another factor. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think that was definitely some great advice. I definitely appreciate that. I guess now let's I guess obviously since you're more familiar with Riverside, let's talk a little bit more about that. So obviously, like you mentioned, you have a lot of extracurriculars you're participating in, and I was when I was talking to you and hearing about what you were doing, I was actually really amazed and actually like it was actually impressive to see what you're doing with yourselves in extracurriculars. So I was wondering if you could obviously again, mention the extracurriculars you're participating in, and obviously maybe elaborate on a few of them that obviously you said that you're super passionate about.
Yeah, of course. A couple extracurriculars I'm involved in is I'm the president for my fraternity for this year, so I'm extremely excited for that. Those are just the boys, right? Sure, that's the best I can say. Like those are your homeboys. Like they got my back, I got their back, so I'm extremely excited to be leading the chapter and working with different members to kind of just see what we can do more. One thing we're really focused on is like community service. Keep giving back. That's what something we're always really big on about. Second one is the student council. I'm on the exec board for ASUCR, which stands for the student body. If the audience watching, I know there's a lot of high schoolers, is that it's basically like a buffed up version of ASB, how I like to say. My job is for this year as the vice president of finance. So I overlook like around 400 organizations. I allocate funds to them around like a $1.2 million budget. So that's kind of it for the student government part. And lastly, I'm also working on a YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, so I make videos trying to help out college kids or like just give advice. My opinion, my 2 cents on things, my opinions on regarding college and like a day in a life video sometimes just for fun. And lastly, I also work on a startup. I can't go too much in depth about, but it's basically a finance web application that I'm working on to kind of help college organizations. Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. That was actually, obviously really impressive. And like you mentioned, you have a YouTube channel, so obviously I'll be linking you in the description. And I advise everyone to
Oh,
check it out.
thank you,
I know
thank you.
I've definitely watched one of his daily and live videos. It is so intriguing to see it, especially,
Mhm.
even just me in college already, just watching other people what their lives are compared to mine. I can truthfully say that it is so different, especially knowing Williams of a different major, of a different school. I highly recommend you guys watch it, even if whether you plan on applying to Riverside or not. Definitely look into it. They're really great videos, and obviously it shows kind of the lifestyle that Williams been going through. And yeah, no, I mean that's great. Obviously, I think I just want to follow up on two things. So one question about your fraternity, and I'll ask you one about the kind of the student council you're on. So I guess with fraternities, a lot of students, it's a very it's something that they're interested in doing, like the whole Greek life, but it's also something that's like, oh, I don't really know how it works. So I guess in your opinion, if you whatever you can say about your fraternity, like how does the process of getting into a fraternity, how does that work?
Yeah, of course. So at first, well, just kind of, I guess a little disclaimer for the high schoolers watching is that number one thing is that I never ever thought I was gonna rush for a fraternity, like in high school. Never. I was like, no, like I seen it in the movies. Like that shit's like, oh, sorry, excuse me, if you gotta cut the cuss word
All
out.
good, all good, all good.
Flipped up real quick, but I was like, that stuff is crazy. Like, there's no way I can do that. Like, I'm not trying to drink all day and stuff like that. But I think is a lot of times I can't speak upon for other fraternities, but a lot of times it's like you got to like kind of test it out first. So what I would suggest that go to these things called rush events and make sure that your morals and your values line up with them, right? See like okay, like these people. So what I did was I went to one of these events and I was like, actually, like it's not just about partying. These people can really help you improve like professionally too. For example, like like you have a lot more people to study with. And then like my fraternity, like we're pretty involved in the student government and stuff like that. So like we in the history that people have always ran for student government positions, right? So kind of motivate you to do the same thing. But regarding back to the process is that first you have a rush event usually. So you go to these rush events and you try to talk to as many people as possible to make sure that you actually like these people that will benefit you socially, right? We all know the parties. We all like to party, right? But also most importantly professionally too. Because if you just want to go to parties, you can go to, there's so many house parties you can go to. Like it's a college, like around the college is always parties. So if you're just rushing for the parties, it's definitely like a no-go. It's definitely not worth it. That's the first thing I would suggest. And then usually after you would, depends on your fraternity, some have a pledge process, some don't. So basically like a 10-week period of kind of like learning the chapter history, for example, or like, trying to help you improve professionally and stuff like that. So you usually have a process. And for my fraternity, it's not too bad. It's nothing crazy. But again, like I have heard some really horrific stories of like fraternities beating on their pledges or making them drink as much as possible. And what I would suggest about is that have a line. If someone ever lay their hands on me, I'm dropping. I don't care. If you're going to make me self-harm, I'm dropping. And once you have that line, no matter what happens, you drop it if they cross that line. Because that's, at the end of the day, like it ties back to the morals and your values. That's not what your morals and your values line up with. If they're going to do that to you, let's say the next cycle comes where there will be a new set of people who are rushing. You got to do the same back to them. Will that make you happy? Will that make you feel good? And if it doesn't, you should not continue with it. So that's what I highly suggest. And yeah, besides that, just have fun. Check every organization out, not just fraternities, sororities, and try to find that click right away.
Yeah, no, and I actually that was a really great advice. I think for some people, some people are afraid to go into fraternities. Like I admit too, like when I was starting off in high school, I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna go into fraternities. Like you mentioned, we've seen that stuff in movies and TV shows. Like that's not for me. Like it just seems like it's just glamorized drinking and partying all the time. But I would say that, like William said, there's a lot of pre-professional organizations. Even if you're like pre-med or pre-law, there are so many like frats and
Yeah.
sororities that relate to those. And like you said, yeah, obviously there are some. We're not gonna beat around the bush here. Like there are some fraternities that they do like heavy
Yeah.
drinking, crazy stuff. So if those obviously don't line up with you, and I hope that it doesn't. It's not your number one goal target. Obviously there is a line you have to cross. You have to draw, and then obviously if that's too much, then just go ahead and just drop it. It's not like it's gonna be the end of the world. There's still other great organizations you can join.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, obviously, I think that was really great advice, William. And obviously, you can see that it's worked out for William because, following up on my next question now is obviously the student government life that you're running at UC Riverside. So I don't believe that were you in ASB in high school? I can't recall if you were.
No, I was not. I just played basketball and volleyball, and that was kind of it. Like straight up.
Right. Yeah. Well, you can see already that you don't have to be an ASB to, get involved in student government. So I guess, William, if you want to touch up on, what's your experience like being in college student government? Obviously, you can't kind of compare it to high school, but in your opinion, how has it been like in college at least?
I think it's a great thing. I mean, just kind of advocating for the student and leading the student population. Like, for example, my position, I I like to be in a position that you can give change, right? And for example, like with my position with the other exec boards, like we can talk to the chancellor often, and I think that's like getting like being an advocate for the student. I think that's a beautiful thing, and also like I'm really passionate about like student. I guess like not student government. I am passionate about student government, but just kind of advocating. So that's something I'm really passionate about too. So the experience has been great. Met a lot of more people like through the fraternity and through student government. I don't know, especially as a business major, I'm sure we all heard the term your network is your net worth, right? So that definitely has been really, really helpful, like meeting people and just growing, knowing how to lead like a professional organization. That has been like an amazing experience. I can say that like you can't learn in school, for example. So these extracurriculars can kind of balance it out in the workforce, right? You learn that, oh, I gotta lead a team now, professional. How do I do that? But if you have previous experience, for example, like how like other people, whatever professional organization you're in, then you can have that experience too and stuff like that. But overall, the experience has been really good. Been able to make changes, pass bills and talk to a lot of students, and it's been very fun so far. Like one of the projects we had this year was then uh ASUCR, which is Associate Students of UCR, which is a student government we have, is that we always give away around like 4,000 sweaters to the
Oh
student
wow.
population, and then it's a great feeling executing at the event, seeing students wear your sweater. Number one thing is that now you're marketing for the student government, right? So people, oh, how do you get the sweater? Oh, that's for ASUCR. So you market the org. And number two, just knowing that students wearing your sweater, seeing it, making an impact in different students, right? Increasing school spirit. That's the number one goal of the whole project. It's a great feeling because at UCR, a lot of times I'm sure UCR is not many students' first choice. So sometimes on campus, you see other students actually wearing like their own college shirts before, like for example, USC, UCLA. And that was the reason we started this project, is that we want students to wear like UCR gear. So it's like, being involved with professional orgs can help you make these impacts. And I think that's the most beautiful part about it.
Oh, no, yeah, that was great to hear. I really loved how something as simple as just like a sweater thing with the word UCR, how like you can see it's obviously reflected in your passion, like how passionate you are, because you being able to talk about this kind of stuff. I think it's really reflective of showing that yeah, if you're passionate about something, you're gonna do well in it. And clearly you can see that how it just sounds exciting just listening it from you, even as just as simple as distributing sweaters. So yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
that's really great. I think just second to last question before I wrap this video up. Obviously you mentioned you've been playing basketball and volleyball in high school. Did you ever continue playing, just intramural sports in college by any chance?
I actually did not, honestly. I got more into weightlifting. I
Oh,
mean, back in my history was that I used to play basketball every day because I want to make it to the NBA, and I still love the sport. I really do, but
yeah.
I feel like it's just kind of time to move on. I mean, I still play intramural basketball with my fraternity, and I have a great time competitive games. But I'm really into weightlifting now. I weightlift like 6 times a week. So that's
Oh
kind of
wow.
what I'm more about now. But no, volleyball wise, not really. It's kind of a little hard to access. I haven't played volleyball over a year. A little guilty of that. But I still play basketball here and there. But I'm definitely still exercising because it really helps my mind to like stay sharp. That's just who I am. Like I need to exercise to be sharp,
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. So it kind of ties into productivity for me.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I mean, even for those like obviously if you wanted to go into college for sports or you just want to play it, you can still definitely continue it. I know there's a couple schools have intramurals or maybe just play a pickup game with friends. I know I would just play soccer with a couple friends there. But yeah, I've been going to the
Yeah.
gym a lot more too. Kind of like what you're saying, just staying sharp, staying focused. It kind of helps you kind of like de-stress a little bit, relax, take your mind off
Yes.
the school. Yeah, you need those breaks. And trust me, ironically, for some reason, exercise was a way for me to kind of like let that stress out or just like, relax a little bit, ironically.
I
So
love hearing
yeah,
that.
yeah, no, it's definitely great. And yeah, I guess just kind of to wrap this video up, well, if you can give any advice to high school students, whether it be about the college application process, the college lifestyle, or just life advice you have in general, what would you tell them?
Number one thing is that college is not the end of the world. It gives you it's a huge advantage. Don't get me wrong. If you get into Harvard, like if I hear someone going to Harvard, if I'm hiring, I'll be like, oh, I'm probably going to hire them because they went to Harvard. Like that's an Ivy League school, right? That's a big deal. But it's not the end of the world. Number one, I don't want anyone to have too much pressure about themselves. I feel like that's what a lot of times it happens, right? Don't put too much pressure on yourself. You'll be okay if you don't get into your ideal school. God has a plan. My favorite quote is, "A man proposes, but God disposes." Right? You can work as hard as you want towards a goal, but at the end of the day, it depends on God to see if He wants to execute out for you. He has a plan for you, whatever you believe in, a higher being, right? So that's the first advice. The second advice is definitely don't just study all day. Enjoy it. These are the 4 years of your life that you're probably never going to experience again. Dorming was such an amazing experience. So amazing, living on campus, meeting people. It was like a life, school-long summer camp. I like to describe it in my YouTube videos. And meet as many people as possible. Even if you're a doctor, engineer, it's always a big advantage meeting people. And this is the best time to do it. You have, like, for example, UCR, you have 40,000 kids there just waiting for you to network, to meet. And all these people are going to go branch out to different fields. Some people might be from out of state. Some people might from the Bay Area. Like this is the best time to make connections. And I don't even like the word connections. I feel like just making friends.
Mhm.
Simply, like you can, like I met
Yeah.
lifelong friends here I know in college that'll be last forever, and I would say that's even more valuable than the education system because I have a strong support system that will always be here for me. And the last one is just go for opportunities. Too many people are scared these days. They're like, oh, I wonder what people are gonna think. You know what? It does not matter. It doesn't matter. Just go for it. If you want to do something, if you fail, so what? No one's gonna be judging you. And if someone judges you, then that's your own problem. Like straight up.
Mhm.
So go for opportunity. So kind of recap is that don't be too hard on yourself if you don't get into your dream college. Just work hard. God has a plan for you. Number two, try to meet as many people as possible because you can meet lifelong friends in college from different areas and learn new perspectives. And lastly, just man, a little slip up right here. But what's it called? Just go for opportunities, right? You never
Yeah.
know what doors can open for you unless you try. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice. I love how you covered everything. And yeah, the name, like we mentioned before, the name of the school. If you say Harvard, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna be intrigued. But at the same time,
Yeah.
yeah, you make the most of it. Go for opportunities. I think for me, obviously going into college, there was so many different organizations, like you mentioned, opportunities that I didn't have in high school. So I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna go ahead and try it, just test it out. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you might find something that you are interested in, something maybe you didn't realize that you would be doing. So obviously, there's a lot of those chances. But yeah, obviously, don't be too hard on yourself, like you mentioned. For your case, that there's always going to be, like, God has a plan for you or something. There's always some pathway that you're going to end up going for you. And in the end,
Hmm.
that's going to be the route that will make you successful. Obviously, your path is going to be different from someone else, but in the end, you're still like, success can be measured in different ways, but it's just a matter of what's the best, most efficient and successful plan for you. So I really
Hmm.
appreciate you, touching up on that. And obviously, Will, we want to thank you so much for obviously coming out, talking with us. For those of you guys, like I mentioned earlier, William does have an Instagram. Well, he has an Instagram too, but he has a YouTube channel. So I'll be linking that YouTube channel in our description. I would highly advise you check it out, whether you're interested in UC Riverside or not. It's definitely great to still see, extra advice from William, as well as kind of like what the life is like at UC Riverside, especially if you might end up going there in the near future. But yeah, other than that, obviously, we want to again thank you so much, and it's a pleasure having you. And obviously, we hope for everyone out there that they got a lot of information from you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, everyone. Stay positive.